This is April.
This is Charlie.
And this is the April and Charlie show.
Last time we checked, we know that it has been 9 months since we last posted. And we have a very good reason for that. And that's why you're here, to find out what the hell is taking so long. So, I guess we could start at the beginning. December 29th. December 29th, we moved to a bigger place because there were 7 people in a 2-bedroom place and it was too small.
At the time, it was
It took us 2 days, and we had tons of help. We had 2 friends of mine that were there helping. It was really cool. It was a lot of fun. I'm gonna insert some videos and pictures right now.
Gunner got it! Who knew it? Gunner, what'd you say? Best friends. Best friends.
No, family.
Sisters.
Okay,
Okay, so what's our
Sisters.
name?
Sisters.
No, what's our name?
Put our names together.
Sisters.
No.
A name.
No, you would put it. You would put it.
You heard it. I'm sure all of you heard it. All our names put together, what is it?
When we were doing the video for Kayla, and you guys were
Alpha.
around.
You guys didn't hear that? Now you call us to Pryla if you're calling all three. Appa to K.
Okay, so come on, man. All right, well, okay. So we moved in here December 29th, and on January 5th, that little 4-month-old baby that you saw way long time ago was much older, and he crawled for the first time.
Why are you going that way?
You're so close. Come on, get him. Go, Daisy.
Come on, baby.
Do it.
He's like, I'm no part. So much work.
Then, so the next morning was January 6th, and it was the first snowfall. And we were really excited to dress him up and take him to go play in the snow. Now, I had a group text that I had with my 2 best friends. And that morning we got a group text from my best friend's husband telling all of the rest of us that we're going to have a meeting at my house, which I found to be very strange because 1, he was never involved in the group text, and 2, he didn't talk to me about it first. So it seemed a little bit off. And so we kept asking questions, but nothing was really getting answered. And me and my friend talked about it, and we were like, well, what if it's a surprise, or, you know, something like that. We didn't really know. And so her husband and her father arrived at, I don't know, probably a couple hours later. And they let us know that she had passed away from what they thought was a heart attack. She was 23 years old, and she just barely started life. And it was a gut punch because, again, she was 23. I'm older than her, which I'm sure you can guess. But it was an absolute devastation because she was so young. It didn't make any sense how a healthy, young, 23-year-old girl who was just busy and everywhere and motivated and strong, how would she have a heart attack? We found out a little while later, about a week later, that it was a pulmonary embolism. The one thing I want to say about that is, I mean, I had not heard about that or known anything about it until this happened. But this is like, you would think you'd know more about it. It's really kind of a silent killer. So pulmonary embolism starts with what's called a DVT, a deep vein thrombosis. It's a blood clot in the inner thigh. That it starts in the deep veins in your inner thigh. So, there's a few ways that it can happen. Genetics, like if your family has blood disorders or clotting disorders or something like that. So if you're predisposed, surgery can cause it. Some birth controls can cause it. And ultimately what we found out was what happened to her is she had taken a really long road trip. She was determined to get all the way out to Pennsylvania from Nevada and back to work in a period of like, I think it was maybe 4 days. She drove out there with her family, and the same day that she arrived, they turned around and came back. And that, you know, in every case that may not happen, but in this case it did. It was a really educational moment, but also a very incredibly devastating moment, and a lot of things that had happened because of that. Like, she was more than my best friend. Our bond to me was soul deep. She was really an amazing person. I don't think she met anybody for longer than 15 minutes that didn't make an impact on her, that she didn't make an impact on. It was really rough to go through that. I learned that grief is its own beast. Grief is an emotion that there is no way of controlling it. It takes its own path. And so February, I was in the hospital for the first time since 2017 for what I thought were heart attack symptoms, and turned out to be an anxiety attack. At the time I had no idea, but of course I would learn. But so that brings us to March 1st.
Well, I was at work and I was doing my job, the same thing I always do. Doing the things I usually do as an adult, and all of a sudden I sneeze and I thought I pissed my pants. I get home and I take a shower and I wash my clothes, or at least I put them in the washer. Well, I start having cramps, which is pretty common because, you know, I feed off of other people, so if they're cramping, I'm cramping. Just how it goes. But I asked my roommate, I said, "Hey, are you cramping?" She said yes. So I figured that was it. Well, the cramps started getting stronger and stronger and stronger, to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. So at first we're like, I don't know what this could be. We ended up going to the hospital. I started walking down the hallway and I couldn't walk no more. I just felt like I had to shit
I was
really bad.
very terrified because generally she's very composed and strong and tough and kind of doesn't let anybody know when there's anything wrong. But this time I knew there was something badly wrong, because she looked at me, her face beat red, and she screamed help while we were standing in the hallway. We got ignored. Mostly people just looked at us like we were crazy. And I'll be honest, she looked crazy.
I am crazy, it's okay.
So, go ahead.
Well, like she said, I screamed help. Nobody wanted to help, but this nurse came in with a gurney. She took off my pants. She looked down, she goes, "That's not a shit, That's a baby.
And our little bundle of joy that we didn't know anything about, on March 1st, 2019, Jackson was born.
Obviously, the nurse didn't know, which means if she can look at me and not know, then you can see where my situation went.
I'm going to insert a picture of the time frame so you can get an idea of exactly how not
Pregnant I looked.
pregnant she looked. Okay, so, yeah, I was in utter shock.
I think we both were, because honestly, I didn't even, like, if you were to ask me how many doctors or who was in the room, the only person I know that was in the room was April. She's the only one I seen.
Also, the reason why this was such a surprise is because over the period of 10 months-ish, she had an implant in her arm that for
Birth control.
a birth control related implant. So there was no reason for us to believe that she was pregnant.
I also, at work, because people kept asking me, because I was getting chunky, but I thought that was the birth control. I was like, that's normal, because birth control does that to you. But I was getting chunky, like fat chunky, not belly, like full blown, like, you know you're pregnant chunky. No, this was chunky as in like gaining weight. But at work, this lady bought me 2 pregnancy tests and told me to take them. I took both of them, and they both came out negative. Now, this was only literally 2 months before I gave birth.
I didn't even know that.
Everything that everybody sits there and says, well, you can't know. How do you not know that you're pregnant?
Well, here's the thing. There's a big stigma, and it happened. There was a lot of backlash. A lot of people said, how did you not know you're pregnant? This, that, and the other. A lot of people got angry. But, I mean, like I said multiple times, there is literally a show called I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant. And what really manifested from it was really interesting, because she started meeting people in her own family who had experienced the same situation.
I've had 2 people tell me so far, or maybe more, but that I remember telling me that they have given birth, or they went to the hospital for medical reasons and found out they were giving birth, and that was what their situation was.
So that brings us to April. In April, I got one of my IT certifications, which I was really proud of, because I've gone back to school starting in January. It has been a rough road trying to do school because I'm going through a lot. Now in May, I started having weird, like, I would get tingling, burning, numb spots, sore spots in various parts all over my body. And it would go on all day long. And I thought that maybe I had something wrong with my nerves. And I tried different things, like I used to drink Monsters every day, so I quit drinking Monsters. I cut out caffeinated sodas, and now I only drink caffeine-free, and I have 1 cup of coffee a day. And I tried different things to try and make this go away. And all the while, during all of this, I ended up in the hospital 2 more times. And I came to realize what I was experiencing was anxiety. And because I started having, I think I've had now about 6 anxiety attacks. And anxiety is like this. Imagine yourself standing in front of one of those tennis ball shooters and trying to answer trivia questions while they shoot at you. That's the insanity. And even when my mind wasn't acting up, my body was. And the reason I had anxiety was because my body was acting up. which is weird because it was also because of anxiety. Very strange. So I've been dealing with that for the last few months, and it put me in a really bad place for a while. Monday I went to the doctor, which admittedly I put off. Even though I went to the hospital a few times, it never really got to this point. But I finally went to the doctor and they put me on Prozac. I know that there are people who think of that as taboo. But today is, I think it's this week or today is Mental Health Awareness. I generally am not a person who would take stuff like that at all. No, I'm pretty much as natural as possible. But I got to a point where I couldn't do it by myself anymore. And I started taking that Prozac, and lo and behold, every one of those weird body pains I had every single day, they went away. So where we find ourselves right now is I have a mass in my stomach. They equate the mass to the size of what a 18-week pregnant belly would be like. No, I am not pregnant. I've not
Are you
been
sure?
positive. I haven't been with a man in over 10 years. So at this point, we haven't gotten a scan or any tests done to find out what it is. There's a few options. It could be a fibroid, which is usually a benign tumor. 80% of women in America have them. It could be a uterine tumor. I'm not really getting much of the symptoms of that, so I'm going to lean towards the not that. And it could also be a stomach tumor, which I also am not getting any kind of symptoms of that either. So I'm leaning toward it being a fibroid. So at any rate, that's where we find ourselves now. We do want to post videos for you guys, and we're going to continue to work on that. I am not going to promise a schedule. It'll happen when it does. We are obviously very busy people. One weird and cheesy thing I want to do real quick before we close this video, because the camera's going to cut out on us. I wanted to give, because I know they won't see it, it's super cheesy, and I'm doing it anyways, which is awesome, but I want to give the Dolan twins a shout out, because over the last couple weeks, I've been watching their channel. I've been binging all their freaking videos.
Yeah, we kind of both have. They're funny. I like them.
They kind of just make you feel good about life. They're funny, they're down to earth, there's a comfort about them. And I really appreciate them existing, because it's taken all this anxiety that I've had, made it a little easier to deal with. And part of the reason I'm sitting in front of the camera right now is because I'm inspired. And you know, I went from waiting to die to I'm slowly learning to live again.
We've also been watching their videos and getting ideas of what we should do. So if you guys have any requests, just let us know. But generally, we'll do your requests, but we'll also be doing stuff that we think is fun. So
Yes.
by all means, put out like what you think we should do, because we are going to do those, but we also want to mix it up a little bit and do something we think is fun.
Well, with all of that being said, we appreciate you guys for sticking around, and
Not hating us so much, not being around.
especially I cannot remember your name at the moment, but you are always there. You know who you are.
I know. I just can't
Lynch Mode was the old name. Shout out to you, because you're always there. You're there right from the start always. We appreciate you. Shout out to everyone else for sticking with us. Like,
subscribe,
comment.
and we'll see you
Next video.